Let's talk about the WNBA. The WNBA has some studs entering into the league, but unfortunately, there's some vets and some people in this league that maybe need to take a look in the mirror and realize that we have a major issue, an accountability issue, in my opinion. It's a mess. It's a fire in the kitchen. It's oil in the pan, and Nationers, welcome back to another episode of The Realest Podcast. Banner right behind me today is episode 60, Nationers. We're only 9 episodes away until the finale, until we peaked as a podcast. I always feel when it comes to podcasts and, my viewing of them, I always feel like it's super fun when you get to like super cool milestones like that. Like, I'm just waiting for the day where somebody has like 42,069 podcast episodes. Just waiting for the day. Nationers, welcome back in again. I hope you guys are all doing well. I'm kind of holding the mic a little different today. I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of nice that I'm able to. I use my hands when I talk. I'm sure maybe you guys subconsciously know that or been like, yeah, Jared, like that makes sense. Like you talk with your hands a lot. And if you didn't notice that, you're probably never going to not notice that. You're never going to unsee it. Nationers, I'm a hand talker. I recorded a video actually not too long ago when I had like the intro in this podcast studio. And I was like, what about if I just like tried that for the podcast? What about if I just got rid of this like giant, like 10 pound weight? Make traveling a whole lot easier, especially like if I feel confident enough that I can just like do this, like that's pretty cool. But again, Nationers, it is good to see you guys back here for another episode. I hope you guys have been well. It's been about a month since the last time that I've been around here. Hey, Jared, sorry for interrupting. I want to let you guys know of a secret mission that I'm on this channel. Nationers, by the end of this year, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on this podcast. I hope you guys know that we're going to be getting some more guests on as this podcast is starting to reboot. And not only that, Nationers, episodes coming out every weekend. So be on the lookout for that, Nationers. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because we are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So if you guys do enjoy, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Much love. Kind of took a little bit of a break from content, not really like podcast specific, or just like, hey, I've just been ignoring the podcast. But I recently just got properly diagnosed with like an injury in my foot, which is kind of just put not a damper in like me mentally or like a damper within like, my day to day, like wearing a boot's fine. But it's just been one of those things where I was just like, hey, like I've been going at this thing this entire year from January, like 26th, constantly like 2 streams a day. And it's just exhausting. Like I just wanted to feel not that I was getting rushed on anything or like I was prioritizing just like streaming the entire time, but I had personally felt like I had just what a lot of people say, like burnt out in a way. Like I didn't feel like I was burnt out. And I don't know if any creator will really ever truly admit that. They're like, well, like I just felt like okay, cool. I just want to take a break. Like, I'm a normal person too. Just like you guys, if you guys want to take a break from like doing things like on a daily, like if you're just like binge watching shows for like ever and you want a break, cool. Like I did the inverse. Like I grinded streaming, did that. And then I was like, okay, cool. I want to go binge watch some shows. I watch Fallout, I watch Halo. Like if you've been doing something for so long, it's just nice to like take a break, like I remember when I was, starting picking up Rubik's Cubes, I was just like doing them constantly. I just did them super constant. Like I'd take them everywhere. I'd fidget with them. I'd have people like, mix them up and I'd solve them. It got tiring after like some point in time, and like for me, I guess maybe something that I've talked about a few times on this podcast, like when I transitioned out of college and like, took not like a break, but like I was like, hey, like how do I fill this void of like track? I'd done track for so many years up to that point, and I decided not to go back to college and, run track or, really continue to compete in the sport of track. But it was more or less like the thing of like, I just wanted to fill the void. It's like if you put so much time into one thing and it's taking up a lot of your time, and then, you no longer do that. It's like, okay, well, what do I do now? Not that I ever felt like, I feel like the thing that maybe some people can kind of relate to is like addiction to something, whether you're addicted to, drugs, or if you're addicted to just really anything that be, coffee. Maybe you're just like addicted to coffee, right? Coffee, when you drink it a lot, or caffeine, they'll just say caffeine, right? When you don't have it, there's like that withdrawal where it's like, okay, well, I need some people like to replace it with something, that, candies, some people replace it with teas, some people just, smoothies, even a lot more sugar instead of caffeine, so it's like, well, I have all this time. I want to do something with it. So yeah, I guess I kind of took a break from, my 2 streams a day for like 3 months. It just was something that I just kind of wanted to do. I kind of, not that I ever really planned on like being like, hey, I'm just going to take, this time off. I always feel usually around April, May, this kind of happens. It happened last year. I think my last stream was like April 26th, and then I came back like, June. So yeah, it's just nice to be able to take a break, just disconnect. I feel like, a lot of creators don't do this in my mind. I just feel like a lot of creators just like always like on the grind. And I totally understand like why they would, especially if there's, monetary incentives behind it. You got to support either your family, yourself, your living situation, right? I get that. For me, I understand that like, hey, I don't pay rent, I make a good amount of money making content. And most of my money doesn't come from the actual content that I'm making. But one day I hope it is. And, some people could look at that and be like, well, Jared, like, why don't you just continually work until it's there? Like, just like anything, I also want to take a break. I had felt like I never really had any time. This is actually kind of cool. I could just keep my mic right here. I never really felt as if I could take some time to breathe, just like breathe a little and like enjoy the moment, right? Not it kind of comes to the old additive, like, why is everyone on their phones when they're at a concert? It's like, live in the moment, like, do that, right? But it's like, not that like you're recording it just for the memories or just recording it because you want other people to see it. It was just more or less like, I just kind of wanted to breathe. I wanted to breathe, take a step back, realize I'm like, okay, what type of content do I really want to continue to make? Like, what's been working, what hasn't, what can I continue to do in the future? And so on and so forth. That was just kind of what this has kind of been. I know maybe more of it has been forefronted with like the foot injury. I mean, with an injury where I'm not super mobile all the time, it would make sense that I would be streaming like all the time, but I just wanted to take a little bit of a break. And again, that has nothing to do with solely just the podcast, because there's a lot of things that have actually happened. Obviously, since we've last uploaded an episode, one of these actually was the solar eclipse, which I am a big space fan. I love science when it comes to that side of things. Like, you asked me about any chemicals or things of that nature. I didn't take any chemistry in high school, so please politely do not ask me about that. But yeah, through this kind of break, the solar eclipse had actually happened, which I found super fascinating. I, again, love science, and we actually were able to see 20% of it here in Spokane. It just happened to be a cloudy day, so it was like not really worth like trying to go see. However, in 2017, when that one came, we got to see, I think, 90% totality. It kind of like gone through Oregon, and we were like right, like the first level out. So I think we were about 90, like 85 to 90% back then in 2017, which was really, really cool. We went over to my dad's work, and, they had like all the glasses. We were like seeing, we're all looking at the sun, it was really cool. I really loved, being able to see like such like what I guess at the time I would have considered like a rare occurrence. I think now, in 2024, since it's only been 7 years, like, oh, it's like, okay if I miss this one, just because like, I did get it to at least see the last one. So it wasn't like the end of the world for me. I know a lot of people, especially throughout the Midwest, even up to the Northeast of the United States. I know I saw this video that showed basically like Airbnbs getting booked like crazy within like basically the arc. So I'm sure you guys have seen, all the fancy little modules of like, okay, here's the path and here's like where you're going to see like totality and where it's all dark and whatnot. But there was like this video of like, Airbnbs getting booked up for this event, which, it's a pretty cool event to have happened. The next one, that will happen in North America, I believe, is in 44. So we got to wait about 20 years. So I will be 43 by the time that happens. And yeah, just with that, it's going to be a pretty cool event. I think it's hitting mostly Canada. So shout out to all the Canadians out there. You guys, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, passports being bought, a year before to go see it if they don't have one already myself. But regardless, again, yeah, got to see the solar eclipse. I think I mentioned this on the last podcast. I have like my notes on my phone and I have like a 3-minute like auto lock that like every single time that I'm just like talking and I'm just doing my thing, it turns off all the time. Let me see if I can like turn that off real fast. But yeah, that was something that I really, I guess enjoyed, being able to witness and see all of the really cool videos that were out there of like, people just like looking at the sun with their phone and then like it goes pitch black, just like that. That is a really, really cool phenomenon. And you get it for like 8 minutes. So that's like actually like a really good amount of time. Like you could do a lot of things in that amount of time. Like I could eat cereal in that amount of time. So, maybe 2 bowls of cereal if I'm really feeling lucky and up to it. But Nationers, pretty much the end of that week. So we had Monday the 8th, we had the solar eclipse. And while, again, this is just kind of updates on what happened, I do want to talk about some important stuff. I'm sure you guys see the title of today's episode. I do want to talk about it, but there is somewhat of maybe, just an update, just a little bit of an update. You guys will see all the time, when I'm talking about stuff. So don't stress. You guys could always skip ahead. But Nationers, we, later that week, right before tax day, me and my friend Amelia actually went down to San Diego. We had talked about, wanting to do a Spartan race, and she's in vet school. She had actually deferred like a year or so. She just kind of like went traveling and, went all across like the Western coast and, through Zion, Utah, and just like a whole bunch of different places on the Western side that are like very touristy or like you can road trip to. And so that's what she did during her year off. And, that meant that she had to make a decision going back to vet school in August, maybe September, but she wasn't quite sure if she was going to do it yet. And the thing is like around that time, there was some Tough Mudders. There were some Spartan races around that time that like were somewhat close. There was also one in Montana that was relatively close, but we had ended up on going to San Diego. And that was just kind of where we went. It was super beautiful. It was pretty cloudy the day that we came. I don't even know how to hold the mic. I don't know if I just hold the mic like this. I'm going to hold the... I don't even know. I'm conflicted. I'm going to... You know what, Nationers? I'm going to take it off the pole because I think the pole's really effing me up. So, yeah, we had landed in San Diego. Luckily, we landed pretty much at the exact same time. The lucky part about it is that San Diego is basically just like one giant terminal that has like 80 gates, it feels like. And all the gates are pretty spread out. Like it's just like this long, like imagine like a smiley face, right? And like it goes from one corner and you have like a bunch of different airlines and then a bunch of different in the middle and like a bunch of different on the outside. And this kind of comes into play a little bit later, but we had landed, she kind of gotten lost. I was just like, okay, I'll just meet you near baggage claim. And we had ordered a car and, apparently we were supposed to take like an Aladdin Street parking, which is like a, parking, that would shuttle you from the airport to and fro. But the thing is like, I was like, okay, well, what about if it's just like right here at the airport? Like we'll just like go look. And I was like, oh, maybe we probably shouldn't go look. We should just find the Aladdin shuttle because that's what it's telling me to go find. So basically we had to go find it. And I was like, oh, This is like 2 miles away from the airport. Like we would be walking right now. I'd have like both my bags. It was just gonna be so bad if we decided to walk. But luckily we got the shuttle, got the car. We ended up getting there again super early. We ended up, I think, around 10, 11, like once we got to the car. And we had some time to kill because we actually had about an hour drive up to the Airbnb that we were staying at. But we had some time to kill, so we got something to eat, first and foremost, got Shake Shack. Second of all, we then went down to the museums. We went over to an Air and Space Museum. Her dad happens to be an aviationist and a pilot. So I figured it would be kind of cool just to kind of go see. I love space, so that was kind of like a cool thing to see. We got to see a lot of like World War II bombers. We got to see like this super, really like dangerous stunt. So back in like the 1920s, maybe like late 1910s, early 1920s, and so on, there was these like super like acrobatic, I wouldn't even call them acrobatic. They're like daredevils. They're like stunt professionals back in the day, like the first ever. And they would like put a ladder down from like the left side of a plane, and they would like go from plane to plane, and they would like hang off the plane, and it was crazy. It was really weird to like see that. I'm like, people did that back then when there was like just no safety, like no safety. Granted, like now, like there's like so much in place when it comes to like Red Bull is probably like the extreme like plane, the Blue Angels, like stunt planes, right? And doing things with that. This was 100 years ago. I'm pretty sure we still thought the moon or the earth was flat and the earth was in the center of the universe. I'm pretty sure that like, I know that's just a lie, but it was enough to still be like, yeah, maybe the earth's the center and the sun actually revolves around us. I mean, I guess maybe 100 years later, there's still people that think the earth is flat, but to each of their own. Anywho, we got to go see that. We actually went to, so they basically, it's just like a light bulb. So you go like right and you kind of follow it up and you go back down left and you just exit. We had actually, went on the simulator there. We'd actually gone to the simulator. So they have these like really cool simulators that you can like, fly planes, and it's like very realistic. Like you each have like this joystick here, and, like, yeah, you can fly a plane, you can be in combat, and like, so like if you turn, you like start going up. If you go down, you're upside down. Like it was super cool. And then we'd ordered a 2-for-1 kind of deal, or like, if you order 2, you get like it cheaper, and if you had bought them individually, right? So we bought it like a package, and one of them happened to be like a war pilot, which I thought was really, really cool. We each got to kind of take turns being, fighter pilots in the war. We were not really good. 2, the second part of the package was that we were part of like a Star Trek simulation. So it was almost like one of those things in like Disneyland where like you're just like in the place, but it's all immersive in a way. And like you're not physically moving like forward and backwards and going through a whole bunch of stuff, but it's like super immersive. So like you feel like the like woo woo woo. We're in the dead of space doing this. It's Star Trek, right? We're in the dead of space doing this. There's no reference point, right? There's just absolutely no reference point. I don't know which way is down. I don't know which way is up. I don't know which way is... I hope I know which way is left. Kind of easy. But I don't know like where we were feeling. So it was like about a 5-minute thing. I was super nauseous like 15 seconds in because like, 1, you're not controlling the thing. 2, there's no reference point. So you're just like, where am I? Like if you had paused, you'd be like, okay, I'm upside down. But it's just like, it was very jostulating. So it was kind of tough to like really, I was like, they have an emergency button, but I'm like, we paid for it. Like if I throw up, I'm just going to throw up after. It was very nauseous for like the rest of the day, which was really funny because I was like, I'm just going to tough it out. And Meli's like, the emergency button's right there. I'm like, it's okay. Like I can hold on. And then like, oh, they like tricked us. It was like, okay, it felt like the end. And then they like did like one more maneuver and then it was the end. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Mind you, we did ask for the wild version of it. There is like a tame version of it, but we asked for the wild version of it. So I kind of did it to myself. Not that I thought it would have been bad. Like, I can, like, if it's scary and like there's pop-ups, like, it's fine. Like, I can handle it. That wasn't exactly what I thought by Wild. I didn't know Wild was going to be like Six Flags, like, most dangerous ride. So we did that. We ended up going to a Japanese, I don't think they put it as a Zen garden. I'm sure it maybe is a Zen garden, but it was a Japanese garden, also down in that same little area. They have like a whole bunch of stuff. Also, the coolest thing is they have like a public basketball gym there. They have like 3 basketball courts like in this gym. No AC in the building. Like 0. None. Like we walked in, I felt like I was in Florida. It's cloudy outside, by the way. No AC. But it seemed like a really cool thing if you obviously want to hoop up. I'm a big hoops fan, so kind of seemed cool. But on top of that, again, Nationers, we went to the Japanese Zen garden, and it was really, really cool. Like, the designs, the flowers, it wasn't really super blossoming that day, or like in the season, but it was really, really cool to see. And I really enjoyed, just, the time that I spent in there. I was also really tired, so I was just like out of it the entire time because I didn't get much sleep beforehand. Or no, I didn't sleep up until my flight, and then I was super tired. I didn't sleep on the flight a whole lot. So, yeah, I was just super tired and exhausted. And I was driving. That was my designated role, was to drive, because the car was in my name with my license. So, just in case if anything happened, I'm the one in charge and the one responsible. But anywho, yeah, so basically we went up. We stayed up in like an area about an hour away of San Diego. We were actually there for a Spartan race. I don't know if I actually described that. I actually posted a video on my second channel where I basically had like pretty much an uncut 2-hour footage of the entire race. I think I only cut out like little bits and bobs of like if Amelia did like a penalty loop. It's just like the flow of things and whatnot, just to kind of keep the flow. But pretty much like it was like, okay, she started the penalty loop, she's done with the penalty loop, and we're back going, So, yeah, little things like that, or like I edited, obviously, like the intro, if you ever watched that video. I think it's a fantastic intro, so if you guys want to check it out, again, I will actually try and remember to put a card here. Hold on. Let me do the little highlight, the marker feature. Look at that, just so I remember. But on top of that, so we stayed up with this guy named Paul. Paul's a really cool guy. He's about 50 years old. Just lives in like a two-level kind of, not like a duplex, but, like a bottom level that you can go to. And then like we just stayed in like a bedroom that he had at his house. So we're like literally stayed at somebody's house. He was a super cool guy. There's also people staying the following day when we left for the same race, which was pretty cool. So yeah, we got to meet Paul. He was a super cool guy. We didn't get to say goodbye to him, unfortunately. So shout out Paul, by the way. We didn't get to say goodbye to him because he had left around like 7. We had gone to bed around like 8. And then we didn't see him in the morning as well, just because it was a super early morning for us. We woke up around 7, got out of the place at like 9 or at 8. We had about a 30-minute drive up to the race, and then we raced at 9:30. So yeah, that was pretty fun. But yeah, that whole trip, we raced. The worst part, my battery died, so I had like no time to record because we took too long on the course. And then, not that by any means, we just expected to finish in an hour and a half, but we finished in like 2 hours. So 30 minutes already gone. I then had to go grab a new battery for my GoPro because that had died, and I had like obligations to record like a video there. So I had to go re-record a section of the race. It was a whole thing. But luckily I got it done. I was really happy. Like I didn't get too much of like short form footage that I got out of the race, but yeah, we basically had to scramble back down to San Diego. We had to, luckily Amelia's parents had actually came. They gave us actually their hotel keys, so we actually like can freshen up and like actually, like not be super muddy onto our flights because we had to go right from the race right to the airport, which I've never done before. I would never recommend this to anyone, just because for Amelia, like I said, her father's a pilot, so a lot of the times they're on standby. Like you'll see the people, like if you're ever at an airport and at your gate, they'll be like, okay, first class people check in, standby checked in and whatnot. Standbys are people that are like, for whatever reason in standby. Some of them, most of them happen to be like people, family members of pilots. So, there's a lot of people on standby trying to get either back to the family or just finding a connection there, and they're, hoping that somebody missed their flight, right? Standby is awful. If you're in like a busy airport or just like a busy connecting flight, it's just awful. But luckily, we were like, she was on the phone with her parents. We had stopped at the hotel. They charge for parking, but it's like per hour. And like they had like a 15-minute grace period. And I was like, okay, grab this stuff. We're going inside. I'm going to take a shower real fast. I'm going to get the car out and then just meet me down back at the lobby. The lady, I said, where is room 1186? She's like, oh, it's downstairs. Okay. Go downstairs. Go to one. We didn't see 1186, so we were thinking, oh, maybe they just put like another one in there. So, punch note. I'm like, okay, the key doesn't work. So Amelia calls her mom. And he's like, no, it's like on the 11th floor. I'm like, okay, great, fantastic. Go upstairs, take a shower, go out to the car, try and pull it out. 17 minutes. Those 2 minutes that we headed downstairs, checked the door, ran back to the elevator, and went up, back over. I guarantee you that was about 2 minutes. Pain. It was a lot of pain. I was so upset. I was like, it has to be $25. $25 for the first hour. I was there for like 25 minutes. I was so upset. But I at least had to drink all the mic fluids anyways because I had bought like too many drinks. So I had like a full on Gatorade. I had like a Prime. I had like a drink from the race that I had. It was a whole thing. But yeah, so yeah, again, Amelia was on standby for 5 different flights. We had actually gotten there at like 4. Her flight actually takes off at 4:40. And I was like, oh my God. Luckily, security was like super duper quick. It was super quick. I probably had like 5 people in front of me. She probably had like less than me, honestly. She like made it through pretty quickly and she was like, okay, here we go. I'm off. And then my plane got delayed. So I was already stressed, but then it got delayed. So I was like, okay, I have a little bit more time, but she doesn't now. So we're getting to the airport as fast as we can. We said our goodbyes super quick. And then, yeah, she headed to her security more at the first section. I was at the last section. But again, just one giant terminal. So if we had bumped into each other, because she also had like an additional standby that was actually right next to mine. But she ended up taking the first flight that she got from there, then to Portland to Seattle to then where she's at. So it was pretty hectic, to be honest. But yeah, a lot of delays. So again, had that delayed. Landed into San Francisco, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have like no time. I have like a super tight connection. I have about like 10 minutes. 10 minutes, right? I don't get, like airports breed the worst type of people. They just kind of do. Like whether you want to admit it or not, they just do. So I was luckily in an aisle seat. Grab my 2 bags. I stand up immediately, try and move up like a few rows, right? Like immediately. Like I'm trying to get off this thing because we already had like an hour delay. And I already like had barely enough time in the first place to get to my other flight. I get up. I'm like maybe in row like 17. Maybe make it to like row 14 by the time like everyone's kind of stood up. The worst part about it is like I was like there. There's like we're like literally in front of the row. Like, so I'm at 14. There's another guy in front of me. So he's like maybe like back half of 13. There was like this girl. Like, I don't know if she was like in college. Mom and dad. All on the right side. So like I'm looking this way. They're all on the right side. This is your guys' left. So they're all on the right side here. But I'm looking at them here. All of them. Every single one of them. Like, well, excuse me. Everyone but the dad because he was on the outside. He was like, Grace, why don't you just let the people standing go? Like, and he says it like in such a snarky accent or like a snarky way. Like I was like, does this guy know these people? And like the lady looks back because the mom had like gotten like right in front of me. And I was like, gee, thanks. She like looks back. She's like, oh, nice camera. I'm like, thanks. Just like, lady, just, I was standing right in front of you. Just let me go. Like her daughter like scoots out and she scoots out. And then like the dad waits. She's like, You could have just let the people go, hun. I was like, oh my God. She like looks back. Again, I have no idea if they know each other. And then it ended up like once I get out there, like I'm booking it. I did not care. I just like, I probably shoulder checked the daughter. I probably just gave her a little shove. I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Why? What are you doing? Like, there's already a guy in front of me that you didn't let out. He goes, and then the mom goes in front of me. I was like, what are you doing? Like just let the people standing up just go out. Easy fix. Everyone else go. Like, we already had like an hour delay. I'm sure you can understand, like, if people have tight connections. I'd also mention because, people are like, like somebody had asked me, is like, oh, do you have like trying to make it to your flight? I'm like, yeah, I have a pretty tight connection. And I'm like, I know everyone around there, dead as can be, definitely heard that. Like, you overhear conversation on a plane, no matter what, you definitely heard that. Like, I know especially the freaking daughter and the mom. Shout out that dad, though. That dad was like, just let them go. I was not a happy camper. Like, I booted out of there, and I was just like, I like ran probably like a good half mile with my bags, because like I think right as I was getting out, like the doors were apparently closing. Long behold, like we had another hour and like a half delay, so I was completely fine. Which in the grand scheme of things, like you do have to kind of take it in the moment because it said it was delayed, so like I at least open up more time. Like, again, it was still going to be tight. It was still like the 20 minutes. Like, so I got the first initial plane delay. Great. Okay, not making the second flight. Or at least if I am, it's going to be very close. 18-minute delay. Cool. I have like a little bit more time. As long as I could get up and out, I'm good. Try that. Get cock blocked. Dead sprinting through the airport. Run the wrong direction. Because, like, I'm looking at the arrows and I'm like, okay, it's F. Okay, F's that way. Dead end. Dead end. Dead end. Don't have F gates on the wrong side. On the other side. Don't have it on both sides of the sign. Have it on one side of the sign, because then I don't think F gate is that way. Just have it on the side that the direction is pointing to. Brothers, San Francisco airport. I have beef with you. I have a lot of beef with you. Luckily, I got there. They hadn't even boarded. I don't even think there was no people at the table yet. And then they moved our gate for some odd reason. I'm sure it was just because of the plane. There was already like a plane there and whatnot, but whatever. We ended up moving like 2 gates over. So I was fine. I was happy. Got back to Spokane pretty late. Got back at about midnight. And yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. Because I ran a race. I woke up. I was stiff. I felt like a mummy. I felt like somebody wrapped me in like duct tape or maybe even toilet paper. And I just was like, okay, put me in my coffin. Put me in the pyramids. I was stiff, nationers. I was stiff after that race. Well, and like we did like 2/3 of the race. We'll say 3/4 of the race. We did 3/4 of the race, and then we did a full race, and then another quarter of the race because my GoPro died. I was like, we'd already rested. I already felt sore. I was like, okay, my body's not moving, and then had to go do it again. So if you guys watch that video, you guys will see. Just happened at not a great time because all the heavy stuff. So I'm like, oh, great. So yeah, San Diego was great. It was super fun. Really awesome to. I don't know, just be out and about. I had raced off with a bad foot or like the foot injury, but I knew my limitations. I mentioned this in the video, so yeah. Hold on, let's do this. Oh, nice, cool. I could finally see my notes. I can finally see them. This is great. Okay, Nationers, let's talk about the WNBA. Okay, the WNBA has some studs entering into the league, but unfortunately, there's some vets and some people in this league that maybe need to take a look in the mirror and realize that we have a major issue on our hands. Nationers. Crazy. Yeah. Again, Nationers, the WNBA is a league that has a major issue. Again, an accountability issue, in my opinion. I'm just going to say it as I see it, okay? hopefully you guys can stick with me throughout this entire, WNBA rant, because I love basketball. I want to see basketball succeed in all fashions, at least domestically. I don't know too much, all of the other leagues in Europe or China or Eastern Asian countries. I don't know all the leagues there, but NBA, WNBA, those are two leagues I'm effing with, and FIBA, and like the Olympic stuff and whatnot. So that's cool, like rocking with it. But, Nationers, again, the WNBA has a major problem. The accountability in it is something that I want to explore today. Okay? So, Nationers, you guys may be familiar with a few names I'm about to mention, or just familiar with at least, I guarantee you're going to know at least one of these names, okay? So, Nationers, the WNBA Draft just happened earlier this month of April. Actually, right as I got back from San Diego, luckily. So it was kind of nice to unwind, get some video stuff done, and then also watch the WNBA Draft. So, Nationers, I'm just going to go through the first 10 picks. These are kind of important for later, okay? So, top 10 picks here. We have Indiana Fever taking Caitlin Clark, again, a name that I think most of you guys would know. From Iowa, we have the Los Angeles Sparks taking Cameron Brink, forward from Stanford. You have Chicago Sky, Camila Cardoso, a center from South Carolina, who was on the championship team from this year and 2 years prior. No, she was on the team last year. She was not on the team 2 years ago. Never mind. Fourth pick, you have Los Angeles Sparks again taking Rakia Jackson, a forward from Tennessee. You have the Dallas Wings taking J.C. Sheldon, a guard from Ohio State. You also have the Washington Mystics, not this Washington Mystics. I'm from Washington State. The Washington Mystics are from D.C. Washington Mystics taking Aaliyah Edwards, a forward from UConn. You guys may have seen the infamous clip of the illegal screen that cost UConn a opportunity to go for the win in the semifinals. In addition to that, you have pick number 7, Chicago Sky, Angel Reese, forward from LSU. You guys may also know Angel Reese. Number 8, Minnesota Lynx, Elisa Peely, forward from Utah. You have the Dallas Wings again, second pick, by the way, taking Carla Leite, guard from France. And then you also have Connecticut Suns taking Leah Lacan, guard from France as well. There's a lot of French. A lot of France. So, Nationers, I mean, these are just the top 10 picks. I think we look at top 10 picks. Maybe a little. I never really take picks, like, especially with the NFL draft going on. I never really take picks in a way that I'm like, oh my God, this is like game changer. Because, like, I mean, we look at like Tom Brady, who is a six round pick. I mean, the WNBA has 3 rounds, has 12 teams, so there's 36 picks in total. Even in NBA, there's only 60 picks, 2 rounds. So, like, talent could come from any which round. But these are just the top 10. These are people that felt like, hey, these are the best people in their position and a position that we need to fill, right? Cool. So, with that being said, I think it's a great overall draft. It was super cool just with the draft. You could actually buy tickets to go see it in person, which I thought was really, really cool. They brought in a lot more, I think just overall, not like production, because I feel like production's always kind of been there when it comes to anything draft night or anything major sports night. But I think the thing is that, like, it was a televised event that, had a lot of eyes on it. I think we all kind of thought Caitlin Clark would go number 1. There wasn't necessarily like a guarantee, but it's always like, oh my God, what about if they don't pick her, right? There's always that thought, right? But it makes sense. They're going to pick her. Indiana Fever probably had a game plan for quite some time. Maybe explored a few different options, of course. I think it's always good to play like, hey, like, don't just get blinded by it. Like, hey, this is the lady that everyone's telling us that we should pick, but we also have to decide that for ourselves, right? Like, is this boy or is this girl perfect for me, right? Like, is that just because other people are telling me that, or is that just because, or is that something that I truly believe in, right? And especially as an organization, there's a lot of opinions, right? So, overall, really cool to actually see some international players get picked as well. I thought that was super unique. Just some names that I'm sure a lot of people didn't know, especially in the international scene. I'm sure people, again, recognize a few names out of this. So, yeah, overall, like, super cool to just watch the draft. Super cool to just see it, like, especially as, like, a league, not necessarily find, like, other ways to make revenue, but to put on an event, right? Like, as a streamer, like, cool. It's like cool if there's like a game or like a stream every like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Cool. But like, what about if you can make one of those days like an event, right? This was something that they built into a spectacle, right? And I thought it was really, really cool. They did like a crap ton. And I mean like a crap ton of just like social media coverage. They did a ton of like, what would I say? Just a lot of press. There was just a lot of hype buildup. There was a lot of buildup into this event. So yeah, I thought it was overall super cool. Again, congratulations to anyone who got picked. I'm not, one that's going to be like hearing my name on draft night, but hey, maybe if there's like a sports commentator draft, like let me know. Like I'm there. Anywho, Nationers, I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be truly blunt. And I understand I'm a guy. I understand like my angle can be maybe viewed as misogynistic, granted, especially when men talk about women, it can be viewed like that. And I understand like not exactly what I'm going to say is that, but I can understand that it can be taken as that. But I want you guys to keep an open mind when I'm talking about this. Again, it might seem a little harsh. I hope it's a little insightful for a lot of you guys. Maybe that didn't even know that this, stuff goes on. Or maybe this is just how I see it. This is how I observe it. I know I'm not the only one that observes it like this. But the major issue with the WNBA is a jealousy problem. Now, hear me out. This is one of two things. You may have seen, I think especially when it comes to the women to men league, disparity, it's always like, okay, like we want to be able to be paid fairly, right? Like I think a lot of this started with the women's international team for the U.S. soccer team. A lot of this also just like, it was a big turning point. It's like, okay. And, a lot of people talk about it within their jobs and their salaries. And, when it comes to like wage, right? Like, cool. Like this is just like the same scenario, just like a different environment, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is the veterans, a part of the WNBA and a part of women's basketball, feeling jealous about a lot of the media attention that, not only players like Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or Cameron Brink or Rickea Jackson or Camila Cardoso, the people that are coming into the league, even like Paige Buckets, Paige Buchers, you have Juju Watkins. I'm sure you guys may be seeing in a few ads. These people, these players, these athletes getting the attention that I feel that some of these vets maybe desired a little bit. Because I'm sure, especially in a sport where, especially in a world that we live in, where there's a lot of eyes, on everything that we post, everything that we do, maybe there's a little bit of jealousy. And here's what I've written up. Okay. This is just stuff that I have, maybe looked at, researched, looked at the CBA, looked at things that, maybe there is a difference between the CBAs. So a CBA, in short, is a collective bargaining agreement. Basically, it's a union. It's a unionized thing between the Players Association on the women's side and the men's side. So the men's have their own with the NBA and the women have their own with the WNBA. So it's a collective bargaining agreement being like, hey, here's the list of things that we want and we think that we should deserve. And of course, there is a back and forth within it, right? It's basically, if you ever studied unions in business or like car manufacturing, the unions, when the car industry was building up, this is no different. A CBA is just a collective bargaining agreement being like, hey, okay, our max salaries for every year starting in 2020, we'll take 2019, add 3%. So it's 1.03. 1.03 the next year, 1.03 the next year. So it increases by 3% each year for a max contract given to a player, right? So stuff like that. Now, I've looked at all the benefits. I've looked at different things, again, that they get just a part of their, collective bargaining agreement, a part of the contracts that they get as players. And I think a lot of it, especially, kind of boils down to, hey, like we want to make money, right? Like, again, for somebody like Kelsey Plum or Asia Wilson, like, is it not that it's maybe fair is maybe not the right word. I think a lot of people use fair when they come to this. But for players, who are veterans, who are really good players, who are leading the league in scoring, leading the league in rebounding, MVP-esque caliber players, Should they still make like $250 million on their 5-year max contract? Probably not. And they shouldn't, because a part of it is revenue-based. So, again, if your league makes more money, which I looked up last year, this is the number, roughly, the WNBA made $200 million in revenue in the last year. That is a ton of money. And I'm sure they're probably even projected to be upwards like $500 million, $700 million, depending on how things go, of course, this season. And I'm sure, like, I would not be surprised if they're at $750 million in revenue this season. I would not be surprised. Now, the NBA does help finance the WNBA. So, basically, the WNBA is being funded and helped support by the NBA. Now, a lot of people look at it and be like, oh, the WNBA has never been profitable. It's never been, something that the NBA has found worth their time, but they're willing to support and put money forth. And of course, as the women, they're always like, okay, that sounded a little misogynistic. The women often do say, like, hey, like, we wish the men would support us more. We like, okay, cool. Like, I understand that. Like, if I'm, if the women are doing great, cool. Like, it's awesome if they share the love. Cool. I love that. I respect that. That is great. But when it comes to money, when it comes to things that maybe aren't your issue, certainly, right? So let's say, I'm going to put this in terms of Mr. Beast, because I feel like a lot of you guys know who he is, understand, he's one of the biggest individual creator on the platform. He makes a lot of money, right? Now, Mr. Beast has helped a lot of people, with, eye surgery, cleft lip, philanthropy, right? Is he entitled to help everyone who asks for help? No, right? That's his money. He could do what he wants with it, right? The money that I earn is money that I can use for whatever I want, right? Do you see where I'm kind of going with this? A lot of WNBA players do in a way sometimes ask like, hey, we wish the NBA would give us more money. That's great. I understand that. Is there an issue with the certain money that we get? Cool. I understand if there is. Tell me if there is, right? How can we work a solution out? Now, here's where I feel like a lot of players get bitter, get jealous. Again, because now we have all these studs entering into the league, people with a lot of narratives, people with a lot of eyes, big followings, and have been seen in the public eye for a handful of years. And, when it comes to college sports, a lot of people love college. When it comes to the professionals, a lot of people maybe don't follow it as much. A lot of people do watch college football, but maybe don't watch NFL. Cool. Understand. But the thing is I feel like some of the vets in the league have sounded bitter over the past few months and even the past year. Because I feel like I feel as if they should have been accredited for the things that they had done already, right? Like almost kind of like a compensation. Like, hey, we've built this foundation, you should help us. Like, right? And maybe that to a point. And I felt like they've been a little bashful towards Caitlin Clark, especially, or players like Caitlin Clark, especially, again, those people coming in. I think everyone kind of points to Caitlin Clark, but I feel like it's everyone coming in. Like Diana Taurasi has maybe sounded a little bit too bitter on the mic. They do a second alt cast for a lot of the college games, her and Sue Bird. Sue Bird happens to be one of the vice presidents on the WNBA PA, so a part of the collective bargaining agreement. She is the Players Association vice president with a bunch of other players, and Sue Bird, and even Diana Taurasi, they sound a little bit bitter. And as a fan, as people who digest content like this, we can see it, right? Like, it's very, even if it's not their attention, it does sound bitter, right? Especially when you have players like this, you have legends, who are, pioneers of this game, to a prominent focal point, sounding bitter about the future players that are about to enter this league. That seems a little odd, right? This is no different when LeBron James came into the league 21 years ago. This is no different. People on the Cavs were like, okay, I guess this rookie, this high school 18-year-old kid out of Akron, Ohio, I guess he's on our team now. He's ain't no big shot. I'm going to show him how, it's like, okay, like, it's no different. I think something with Victor Wembanyama, who is a generational talent out of France. Again, a lot of French basketball players coming out. There's a lot of people, especially when they point towards that, they look at Victor Wembanyama and be like, man, this guy's going to be great. It's, especially when we see the difference, right? Like, why would you not take an opportunity to praise an athlete instead of being like, oh, like, I'm not too sure if she's going to be like this good into the league. Like, wait till she gets to see me, it's like, okay, well, I'm sure, like, it's not going to be the exact same. I don't think she's going to be scoring, like, 30 points a game. I don't know. Maybe she goes 35. I don't know. But, like, take a moment, make it a moment that feels positive and builds a positive public perception of not only yourself, the league, women's basketball as a whole. Like, sometimes I think people feel like things aren't, or things are just about them, right? And I get it. I totally understand it. I think a lot of pundits, like, you get people like Skip Bayless, you get people like SAS, Stephen A. Smith, right? People who just, are loud, Kendrick Perkins. Like, these are people that I don't really like when it comes to basketball commentary. I find them very annoying. I find them just to be very much like, hey, this is what I feel now. 2 months later, I'm going to feel drastically different, and nobody's going to remember about what I said 2 months ago. Cool, great, right? So when it comes to that, overall, I feel like a lot of people criticize women's basketball in a league, a WNBA standpoint. I think a lot of people now have maybe what I would consider a good public perception about women's college basketball, but those are two different things. Women's college ball and WNBA are two different things, right? So a lot of people do criticize that, oh, they can't dunk, they turn the ball over too much, they're not as entertaining. I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of entertainment factor. And I've heard a lot of people, I've heard Shaquille O'Neal, I've heard Gilbert Arenas, I've heard Michael Porter Jr., I've heard so many basketball players be like, just lower the rim, like you can dunk. Have you ever tried shooting on like a hoop that's like a foot lower? Have you just ever tried? Like, imagine all your life you've been shooting on 10-foot hoops. Cool, great. Now you're in a professional setting, you just lower it a foot, half a foot, few inches. What are we talking about? To me, the dumbest idea. That's like if we made all mouses like left-handed because it was like more entertaining. All mouse. Like, they make left-handed mouse, but we made every single mouse like left-handed. It's like, well, my entire life I've used it right. I could use a mouse on my left hand. It'd take me a little bit of time to get used to, but it's a dumb idea, in my opinion. Because, like, especially for a caliber player like Caitlin Cook-Clark, that's what me and my sister call her. You also have people, granted, if you're towards the basket, towards the rim most of the time, or shooting layups or scoring layups, or floaters are probably like the first or mid-range or even obviously three-point shots. It is drastically different when you move the hoop down one whole foot just so people can dunk and make it more entertaining. No. I get why, like, people are like, well, it's okay. The dunks are exciting in the NBA. I get it. But we're comparing them because, like, cool, men are usually taller. Like, the average height of most players in the NBA is 6'8". Camila Cardoso, one of the tallest players that just got drafted, is 6'7". One of the tallest players. She might actually be taller than that. I actually don't know. She might be taller than that. But again, men usually in the NBA are typically taller. They average around 6'8". You have players at 7'4", 7'5". Steph Curry can hardly dunk, and he's 6'2", right? I get it. I understand. But Steph Curry is a shooter, right? I don't expect him to dunk the entire time. So, when it comes to that, super dumb. That's not a solution that I find, like, to make the NBA, the WNBA, more entertaining, right? That's not the point. But again, the criticism comes because of the entertainment value. I think also political narrative around the WNBA is a little a deterrent for many, especially when it comes to, the fair pay thing, I feel like that rubs people the wrong way a lot of the times. I even think like BLM, especially with basketball, it's very prevalent. I understand. The NBA was the same way, where they had, a lot of political things going, at the forefront of basketball. I totally get it. I can understand why it's a deterrent for, a good amount of people, especially when it's constant, right? Like, I feel like the NBA over the past 2 years kind of, not that they moved on from it, but they definitely didn't make it a forefront, right? It's just kind of annoying. Like, political talk just is generally annoying, especially when you're watching sports, right? We see this in the NFL. We see this also. We see it more in the NBA. I know players like Jaylen Brown, he's very heavy on equal rights. And I totally get it. It's something that he feels very passionate about. He keeps it within his team. He wants to make sure people are well known, know about things, or hey, if you want to learn more, hey, we just heard about this thing happen, and we want to let our fans know. The Boston Celtics. I was at a Boston Celtics game. They mentioned this live in the arena. Cool. That's super awesome. I get it, but I feel like sometimes when every single thing is about politics and it's always at a forefront, and you're not so much incorporating it with it, but it's basketball, it's political basketball instead of politics and basketball, right? Can be a deterrent for a lot of people. So I feel like, especially in the WNBA, that definitely gets kind of a bad rap and is a deterrent for a lot of people. Not that it's not an entertaining thing, but I feel like, again, politics, super annoying, especially in a year like this. So this is one thing that I want to touch on, because I feel a lot of players have been maybe a little bit distasteful, being hey, you love basketball, why don't you watch us, right? And I feel like they've been a little bit distasteful, especially when it comes to wanting more money as a league or as a player, because a lot of people do say that they're hey, I have to go to another country to go play. I'm going to talk about that in a sec, but I think a lot of people in the WNBA, players, have kind of not begged, but borderline begged in a way of hey, you love basketball, why don't you watch us? We want more money, we deserve more money. And to each of their own. But just like anything, the UFL, XFL, I think it's just the UFL now, but they just merged, right? It's a lower level football league. It's just lower level. Granted, it just is. Should they also get that same amount of money? And not that it's just money or revenue splits, but it's the equal percentage of, hey, this is what your revenue splits are. Us as players also want to make the same, which, if anything, the ladies, the women, make more than the boys. They make twice as much percentage-wise per contract for total amount of revenue earned in a given year. That's just simple math. You could do that any year for any contract for any player. Average salary, total revenue. Just divide it. Cool. Makes sense, right? You could do that for men's and women's. I believe the women make 0.18 and the men make 0.09. Per contract for share of revenue. Just think about it. Cool. If the percentage is double, great. That's super awesome. But if we're going to double the men's, then either we need to cut the league in half or double the amount of revenue that we get. Right? So one thing I know a lot of women have talked about is having expansion. Well, cool. But what about if you still make the same amount of money and now you have more employees to hire? That doesn't help. That's not great. So, again, I feel like the WNBA is at a very odd pinch point where it's okay, well, if they expand, they have to make a decision no matter what, right? I'm sure they're going to earn a lot more revenue this year, which is fantastic. It's super awesome, right? But again, I guess maybe back to my point is the MLS is a lower tier caliber football. It just is, comparatively to Premier, Bundesliga, La Liga, El Italiano, the Italian league, whatever it is. You mean to tell me that the MLS should get the same amount of money and revenue just because they're playing the same sport? No. Just because I love football and soccer doesn't mean I'm going to watch like if the premiere's the best of the best, great, cool, I'll watch it. Granted, the WNBA is the best women's basketball players in the entire world, in my opinion. And it is. Like, whether you want to agree or not, it is some of the best and the best WNBA or women's basketball players, in the world. I get it. NBA is kind of the same way. It's the best of the best, right? On contracts with teams winning championships. I totally get it, and I understand it. But just because it exists doesn't mean it should just get viewership and get money, right? I'm sure there's some really good dart players out there. Cool. Is darts like super entertaining all the time? Like bowling. Bowling's like on ESPN like randomly, but a lot of people get the exact same score a lot of the time. Not super entertaining all the time. It's cool if they like hit strikes, and it's cool if they get high scores. Cool. Cornhole. Cool. Like, just because it exists doesn't mean it is always going to get like viewership. Like the Canadian Football League, the UFL, right? The XFL, they did not do great in their first few years, right? They just didn't. And not to say the WNBA is like struggling, it's not like it existed for like 4 years now. It's existed for nearly 25, 28 years. We'll just say 30 years. Nearly 30 years. It's a long time, right? So, with that, let me tell you about some of the CBA. Now, CBAs run for a period of time that is given out to this contract. So the men's is through the 29-30 season. The women's was signed in 2020 and goes through the 27 season. So we have a few more years until they create a new one and see if there's any changes. So, one thing is that, a lot of WNBA players, people, maybe that aren't like the star player or, their contract's not as high as, their counterparts, not their counterparts, but their teammates. They typically go overseas to go make more money and play in a different league, right? Brittany Griner was one of these players. You guys may be wondering, like, what the hell is she doing in Russia during a war? Like, why would you go there? It's probably not a top destination, but she was actually playing in a league there and got caught trying to, I think, not smuggle. Smuggle is probably the wrong word. But trying to get, certain hash marijuana, THC things across the border. And got arrested for 9 years. We ended up trading her. Guess what the public perception? And this is something that I really want to talk about. I'm going to hold off for a second because you'd be surprised. Like, both CBAs come with a lot of different perks. Obviously, for the men's side, the average contract varies around $10 million. Now, mind you, I think that number is a little high just because you have players making $250 million, $50 million per year. You have players, on vet mins at 1.4, right? It's still a lot of money, right? Obviously, money still goes to taxes regardless. So I'm just taking it as its totality, not of what it taxes, right? So, benefits that like you even get being a part of the WNBA. You get maternity leave. You get maternity care and assistance. You get a 401k, which like even some jobs don't even supply. You get dental and medical care. Great. Super cool. You get life insurance up to $100,000. Now, again, if the contract, an average contract is $110,000, that's great. You also have childcare assistance for anyone, obviously, with women bearing children, having kids. You get childcare assistance and family planning. For new players going into the WNBA, if you are having to travel, let's say, we'll put Caitlin Clark here. We'll say if you are going from Iowa, where you're from, all the way to Indiana, not super far, but enough to drive. Let's say, I don't know, you can't drive. Let's say you're going from LA all the way to Connecticut. You're playing for the Connecticut Suns. Cool. So you played in UCLA. You're going all the way to Connecticut. They will buy you a 2-bedroom apartment for a certain amount of price that they will cover. You get a free apartment for a certain amount of price. And this all varies per year, per team, depending, right? Because like an apartment in Utah is not going to be as expensive as an apartment in LA. Cool. So you get a free apartment. Your car will also, for $2,000 or up to $2,000, get covered for its transportation if you don't drive it, of course. It will get picked up to LA, from LA all the way to Connecticut and back when you need it. That's great. That's super awesome. So you get a free apartment, free living. You get the benefits of, what I would consider a good corporate job. And then on top of that, This is a CBA that they wrote up in 2020. Now, I don't think anyone in 2020 was foreseeing where we're at now, but you do write into your revenue share. You do write into what I read is basically your revenue splits. So whatever revenue split they decide in 2020 is what they get all the way until 2027. And again, you get 3% increase of max contracts for players 6 years in the league or more if they get signed. Now, there's a few specifications. Like if you played like 6 years, you're considered a vet, but it's 5 years if you hadn't entered the league until then. Cool. I get it. Now, that's a lot of benefits. I'm sure the men's, I read on the men's side, they have a lot of the same thing, which is great. Super cool. A lot of this does come because like players like Skylar Diggins-Smith, who had a baby, she was on maternity leave. She had no benefit. There was no right for her to be at the facility, according to the team. She, even caused like trouble. She was still signed to the team. She should still be able to use trainers, use, the facilities there for her at her disposal. So a part of the CBA was this. That was this. And it's super cool. It's nice. It makes sure that, these players are well covered within their teams. Make sure every team has that available and accessible. They also get meal plan type things where they get a certain amount of money for traveling. And that's nice. It's super cool. It's super awesome that they're able to get their own stuff. So one of the things is like, okay, well, we can get rid of that and then pay you more, but now you're responsible for getting that yourself, or we can supply it, so cool. It's like, do I want to make more money going into my pocket? I could spend it however I want, or would I rather be a part of the league, get this, and then use my money that I get more as like spending change in a way, right? So it's a battle of two tails because, especially when people become like, hey, we want more money. It's like, okay, well, again, it's hard to make more money when your league doesn't make more revenue. It's like if me and my three friends, are working at the same place. We'll say it's TJ Maxx. We're TJ Maxxing right now. We're trying to max our revenue. So we're at TJ Maxx. We're trying to max out our revenue, trying to max out the amount of money that we get and earn. It is hard for that company to say yes to all three of us. Maybe it could say yes to one of us because hopefully if I work hard enough, if I'm earning enough money and I work hard enough, the company will continue to make more revenue, right? It takes time for companies to make revenue, right? It's hard to pay people more money when you aren't making the same equal revenue. Now, some people might say, well, the contracts have stagnated, but the revenue's increased. When you place max contracts, you can't go above what that is. You can't. Unless that is specifically written into the CBA or there's a change signed by the WNBA PA or NBA PA, right? Now, you get, again, these are two different things, the WNBA and the NBA CBAs. They're drastically different, right? But, again, it is hard to pay somebody more money on a team if, again, the overall league is not even profitable in the first place, but also not earning more revenue. Now, the reason why I bring up people, especially WNBA players, being bitter or being jealous is because right now there is a gold mine for potential maximization, TJ Maxxing for the WNBA. There just is. You have probably one of the best players to come out of college, granted, like the highest scoring D1 athlete on the women's side, Caitlin Clark. You have Angel Reese, who's a great player. You have Camila Cardoso, who's a great player. Great story out of Brazil. You have players like J.C. Sheldon, Cameron Brink. You have great stories out of those people from France. You have great players from the Croatian, Nika Mule, right? You have people who are the future of this league. And if we're not building it together, we're just tearing them apart. And there's no reason for that, right? There are 3 teams this season that sold out their entire season tickets, right? Their entire season tickets. And I think there's something slightly to do with this, and I don't think it's going to be what you think it is, okay? So 3 teams sold out their season tickets, and mind you, this is not like 1,000 seats. This is not 1,000 seats. This is like 6,000 plus seats for at least each team, right? Some more, some lower, right? I think the Las Vegas Aces is 9,400. They had the highest per game attendance at around 22,000 per game. The lowest, I think, was at 9,000 per game that I looked on a stat board from last year's attendance. So you had 3 teams. You had the Las Vegas Aces, who actually sold out their season ticket before the draft. Before the draft. So keep that in mind. That's before the draft. You also have the Dallas Wings and Atlanta Dream. Now, Atlanta Dream only had 2 picks this entire draft. So to me, that's not because of the draft. That's just not because of the draft. It just isn't, right? Because, I'm sure maybe the Indiana Fever will probably sell out their season tickets if they haven't already. I'm sure maybe they don't even have a whole lot. I'm sure maybe they did, but maybe it might have been a lower amount so more people can buy individual tickets to go see Caitlin Clark and the team. So, cool. I don't think the Atlanta Dream was because of the draft. I think, personally, because Atlanta is a big basketball city, I think there's more eyes on the sport, right? I think there's more eyes on the sport. And I think just with Atlanta being a super cool basketball city, I think that helps. So 2, the Dallas Wings has one of the best guards in the league who I think can win games, already on the team. She was the highest point scorer, clutch scorer as well in the WNBA last season. I don't remember how to pronounce her name, by the way. I do have it here, but I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Onyeka Ogwumike. I don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that, okay? So, the Dallas Wings also drafted at pick 4. They picked J.C. Sheldon, who I mentioned earlier. I believe she's a great player out of Ohio State. But here's the thing. Ohio State only made it to the second round and lost to Duke, a 7 seed. Duke, a 7 seed? Okay. So, J.C. Sheldon and the team didn't make it past the second round. So it wasn't just because of like the hype of March Madness and like the team making it far, right? And it wasn't because of the French player that they picked, because I guarantee you nobody knew about her until she was picked. Whether you want to admit it or not, you'd be like, yeah, I scouted her from France. I'm like, you probably didn't know that there was French international women's players before the draft. I guarantee you. Guarantee it, right? So if it's not any of those reasons, and if the Vegas team, the Aces, the Las Vegas Aces, sold theirs out before the draft, what is the cause of this? So the Las Vegas Aces are the back-to-back champs. They're trying to three-peat this year, which I think is great. They have Jackie Young. They have Kelsey Plum, like I mentioned, Asia Wilson. They also have Chelsea Gray. That's her name. Chelsea Gray on the team. So they have a really awesome core. They're really exciting. They actually, again, hold 22,000 people in attendance every single game, which is super cool. Now, that's a lot of people. 22,000 people is not a lot when you put it into like big stadiums, but it is a lot when it comes to the most watched team in WNBA, right? It's a lot. It's double the lowest team, right? So I find it interesting because when it comes to the future of the WNBA and women's basketball as a whole, again, the major issue I feel is we are trying to tear down and hold back players who are coming into league, who have a lot to maybe show, prove, a lot of excitement around them. You know, like I mentioned, all the players in that top 10, people who are still in college right now, like Paige Beckers. You also had Juju Watkins, also still in college, who, you know, have been very prominent this season, right? Cool, right? You have this future. You have 4 years of just awesome talent coming out of college and going into the WNBA. Why would we ever tear that down, right? Sure, like the entertainment factor might not be there all the time for every single person. Like people are going to say it's boring no matter what. You're probably never going to get, you know, everyone's opinion onto the same doorstep as you, okay? Probably not going to happen. But the public perception for the WNBA is so high right now. I don't get, because I feel like this is the major issue, I don't get as veteran players why they would ever try to hold back the talent that is coming through college and being like, hey, I don't think they're going to be as good, or they might die when they, get to the WNBA. They're not going to be, the star that they once were. They're not going to have the role that they once were. It's like, okay, cool. But like, can we embrace what they're doing right now? And can we build that up together? Right? Like, again, we've seen this with LeBron James. LeBron James became the best player in this century. Cool. That's great. We see Victor Wembanyama, again, a player who out of France, who was very highly prospect out of a lot of NBA players being like, man, like the league is not ready for this. You know how awesome it is and super cool. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't wait, until Victor Wembanyama actually plays. That's so cool. Like if these guys are saying he's good, like he must be really good, right? But if we have Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, different types of players out there who are, supposed to be the leaders and, supposed to be, even some of them on the Mount Rushmore towards the end of their careers, Leslie Jones, not Leslie Jones. That's not her name. What's her name? There's an infamous Draymond Green snippet with her. The whole thing. But when you have these awesome players, who are supposed to be the face of the league, not only of their franchise, but of the league, breaking them down. I just feel like the NBA, the WNBA, I'm just going to call it the W, is just at a weird spot right now. I just feel like their actions are more detrimental than they feel like they realize. And especially with this league, I think just going to have continued success. It's had Sabrina Ionescu, I think, was a big catalyst for a lot of people kind of watching because she was electric when it came to college at Oregon. She obviously had the three-point competition with Stephen Curry, right? The greatest three-point shooter in the NBA and to ever live, right? That is super cool. That's awesome eyes. And we have Kenny Smith talking about like, hey, like they should have moved the line forward. Like, what are you talking about? Again, we don't hate women. We hate annoying people. That's what we hate. We hate annoying people. I hate it when Kendrick Perkins. I hate it when Skip Bayless. I hate it when Stephen A. Smith has some dumbass take about Quentin Grimes playing for the Knicks and how great he's been playing when he hasn't played for the team for 3 months. And he has an MVP vote. That frustrates me as a fan, right? I want to see Caitlin Clark succeed. I want to see Angel Reese succeed. I want to see Camila Cardoso succeed. 2 of those people are teammates now. They play for the same team. I want to see them all succeed because I'm a basketball fan and I'm passionate about this stuff. It's annoying when, there's a lot of political stuff. It's annoying when people feel like their only perception of the WNBA is that they just want more money and it's never been successful. The WNBA, again, is in a weird spot, and not that it's a fragile spot, but it's in a unique spot that we can have years of success to continue. And even if we have to flip the switch on the entire narrative of the WNBA, it's going to be a blip in its reality, right? You're going to be like, okay, cool. Like a few years from now, you're going to be like, yeah, it was super awesome. Like I remember Caitlin Clark got drafted. I remember like this got happened, right? People remember how you make them feel. And if you can create these awesome storylines, if you can create these awesome moments, right, through social media, like we have, when Caitlin Clark broke the D1 record, when she broke the all-time record, when she passed Pete Maravich, when Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are going head-to-head. Last year, when it was LSU versus Iowa in the finals. Like, these are matchups that are super awesome, highly contested. Like, when we have the most watched women's basketball game in college 3 games in a row, that says something. And so to all, anyone that you may hear that is bashful, in the comments or, bashing on, players that are in the league, like, granted, they probably don't care. They probably just don't. Like, sure, maybe it affects them, of course, if you see comments being like, yeah, I wish that they would play better. Like, they just need to grow up. Like, they're classless or like whatnot. I'm sure it affects them, right? They just want to play ball. I want to see good ball. Just like anything, you want to see the best of the best compete against the best of the best at their best, right? That's all that we want. When I watch the Olympics, I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm a big track guy. I've watched Usain Bolt demolish the U.S. 8 years in a row. It sucks. It's awful. But I love good track, and I can respect somebody like Usain Bolt for putting not only, sprinting, but track and field on its map, right? That is super awesome. Imagine people like trying to bully and build down Usain Bolt and break him down, right? We would probably never see track as it is today, right? It's super awesome when you see Sha'Carri Richardson do what she does, even after everything that she's been through. It is so awesome, right? I've been bashful of people before, right? I'm not one to like be like, hey, I'm like a perfect person in the comments, but I hope you guys know I'm an honest person when it comes to it, and I see it and I tell it how I see it, right? So when it comes to the WNBA, I just want to root for people when it comes to their success, because we're watching the professionals, right? Granted, when I watch the Detroit Pistons, like maybe they're not the best team, but I love good ball. I love it when like the Detroit Pistons are like 26 losses straight and they're facing the Boston Celtics and they're up by like 19 and a half. That is super cool. So yeah, my WNBA rant kind of ends there. Again, I think the public perception, the storylines, the entertainment factors, all kind of play in. But when we have faces of the league trying to tear down what is to come, I feel like we have an issue with that. And again, when you have I put it here, when you have bad publicity on a league that's already plagued with bad publicity, you're not winning. You don't win. Again, the Brittany Griner thing, that was not a great thing for the WNBA. And especially when this is just me, because I find it so funny, because a lot of people are like, hey, bring her home. Brother, if we make her seem like she's like the LeBron James of basketball, Russia's going to want a lot more than just like some random person to be brought back home. They're going to ask for a lot more, just like diamonds, right? When there's only one company selling diamonds, they're expensive as hell. But yeah, it was pretty rough. And again, when you have a bad publicity on a league plagued with bad publicity, it's a mess. It's a fire in the kitchen. It's oil in the pan. And I just hope that we could all move past it. I'm sure the Brittany Griner thing, she's never going to live that down, because I even feel like it wasn't a great trade. Like, hey, it's the actions. You have to live up to those actions. I understand maybe 9 years is rough. I don't make the rules. I'm not Russia. But the one thing is that we also gave back the biggest arms dealer in the world. So, it is what it is. We can't revert that. We can't be like, hey, we're going to send her back. Can we have the other guy back? It's just not going to happen. But, it's just politics at that point. It's right. The president, whoever, I think it was Joe Biden at the time, wants to build a good eye, for a lot of people and be like, hey, like a lot of people are bringing eyes onto it. I can do a good thing here. Cool. I understand, by all means, any president would have maybe thought the same thing. Maybe had done it. I understand. So, again, bad publicity still is good publicity. Any publicity is good publicity, right? So, whether or not that's a good thing or not, that's up to everyone to decide themselves. Okay, Nationers, where are we at here? I had a whole bunch of stuff on the J. Cole Drake stuff. Whole bunch of stuff on it. I actually kind of want to save that. We're going to try and get Jack back on the podcast. I don't know if you guys remember Jack. I had him on episode 11. Where's he at? He's right there. Episode 11? Maybe 9. Right here. I had to get 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. I had Jack on. That's all that you need to know. And we talked about music. And I would love to talk about the J. Cole Drake responses to the Kendrick verse. And the rap civil war. I'd love to talk about that, but pretty interesting nonetheless. I hope that I get the chance to talk about it. I'm going to try and get him on this week if he's free. But in addition to that, we talked about the WNBA draft. The NFL draft just concluded today. I'm a big Raiders fan, and I feel like we picked some great people. We got a great linebacker, I think in the 4th round, 5th round, that I was really, really excited about. Just a pure, raw linebacker, which I think we needed. In addition to that, we also got a good tackle and a good center, which I think are going to be a great fit. So I think the center is going to move to guard. Potentially, we might have him as a center, but I think we're going to have him as a guard. Or we might have him as a center and then put the center that we just signed at the guard. So one of those guys are going to switch. But yeah, then we got Brock Bowers out of Georgia. He was a great tight end. He got injured, I think, late into the last season, so I'm glad he's healthy. I think he'll be really good, especially we have Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame from last year that we picked in the second round, who I thought was the best tight end of the draft class. A little bigger guy, but I think Brock Bowers is more of a flex tight end where he could play like slot, whereas Michael Mayer is more of a blocking tight end. So yeah, I think he'll be a good combination with those guys in there, especially as we see a lot more tight end packages like that, especially we see it on the Chiefs side of things. So yeah, we have that. We didn't get any quarterback though. We have AOC, Aiden O'Connell. We also have Gardner Minshew out of Wazoo, who I adore because he's out of Wazoo. So yeah, we have him, and with two other guys that I don't recognize. I thought we had Hendon Hooker on the team. He might be on a practice squad. He was hurt coming out of Tennessee last year, and then, yeah, he didn't play at all last year, so a little upsetting. But Nationers, thank you guys again so much for watching today's episode. Not too much comments about the NFL draft. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. getting drafted today is pretty interesting. I think a lot of people were pretty shocked right initially, but I mean, like Jordan Love got picked. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers until Aaron Rodgers left. Who was it? What quarterback sat behind? Alex Smith was brought in when RG3, Robert Griffin III, was drafted in. So, different situations where you have two really good quarterbacks and, one sits and one plays, or if one gets hurt, the other one goes in. We've seen this with Tom Brady, who I mentioned earlier. So, again, Nationers, little interesting pick, especially at 8, but it's a good draft pick. I think a lot of people had Michael Penix Jr. going to the Raiders, but I get it, and I understand. But Nationers, thank you guys again so much for watching. If you guys haven't already left a like on today's, not live stream, today's podcast episode, make sure to do so down below. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So Nationers, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't already. I'll see you guys in the next episode. 07, and peace.